Over the past couple of weeks, we've built several super functional systems for very specific purposes. First, we did the $1,500 capture and streaming system, which is still back there. Then we put together a $2,900 4K editing rig. But for the majority of consumers out there, those price points are not really within reach. Luckily, that is completely fine because with the components available right now, you don't need to be spending a month's salary if all you're looking for is a killer 1080p gaming experience. So that's what's on deck for today. A $550 build that should kick some serious. Gamer, content creator, movie lover, you can be all three with BenQ's new EW3280U monitor. With a slick construction and minimal bezels, it'll look great on any desk in any situation. The 4K IPS panel shines for color-accurate work, but when you want to kick back and watch a movie, BenQ's HDRI technology takes your media to the next level. Or fire up some super fast gameplay and enjoy a tear-free experience with AMD FreeSync. Don't make compromises when it comes to your display choice. Get everything you need in one awesome package. For more information, head to benq.com or check the link below. A few things to keep in mind before we dive into today's build. I base a lot of my build projects on your feedback and requests. So be sure to sound off in the comments down below on what you think of this build and what you might want to see in the future. Most of the videos moving forward on this channel will be builds. And if you've ever been curious as to the best way to part out an $800 system for college or a $4,000 ultimate gaming rig, hopefully I can help you out with that. Also, make sure to get subscribed so you don't miss out on those next few projects and hit the notification icon while you're down there. So this right here is going to be an affordable solution for 1080p gaming. But there were a few parameters that I didn't want to compromise on, and as a result, you might be able to assemble at least a similar system for a little less money. However, I think that the areas that I chose to go a little bigger in are going to pay off in the long run, and I'll explain my thought process and perhaps some alternative choices as we move through our parts list. First up is our processor, the Ryzen 5 1600AF. For those of you unfamiliar with this specific CPU, don't be scared by the nomenclature. Even though it looks like a Zen 1 Ryzen 5 1600, it's actually just an R5 2600 in disguise. It's built on the 12nm Zen Plus architecture instead of first-gen Ryzen's 14nm, and performs almost identically to the 2600 in every way. The reason to go with this over the 2600 is strictly the price. While the 2600 is still a great chip and still widely available at retail outlets, you're going to be paying over $100 for it, usually more along the lines of $130. Why do that when you could score a 1600AF for $85 instead? Now, if we're shooting for the lowest price target, the 3000G from AMD is also an option, and at $50, that's a 32% cost savings. But since we want to use discrete graphics here, the iGPU on the 3000G is basically irrelevant, and other than that, its raw processing horsepower is relatively low. If you wanted to try out an Intel option, the closest is the i3-9100F at about $80. But if that's a 4-core chip without hyperthreading, whereas the Ryzen 1600AF gives you 6 cores and 12 threads for $5 more. I did struggle with the motherboard choice here. I wanted to keep the price target at $550 for the whole system, and in a minute you'll see that I was successful in doing so, but this is probably where I cut the most corners, and I'm not sure I'm 100% satisfied. The Gigabyte GA A320M S2H is basically the cheapest motherboard on the market that supports this chip. It comes in at only $55, and I have used it before in a budget build where it performed admirably. But it does have its limitations. First, it's an A320 chipset, meaning that it's not capable of overclocking. Second, it is micro ATX form factor and will be building in an ATX chassis. Third, it only has 2 DIMM slots. Fourth, it does lack some features that we've become accustomed to seeing, like faster memory support and even RGB headers. But if we wanted to step up to a product that has 4 memory slots and some of those other inclusions, the next one up the list is probably the Asus Prime B 450M, which is still micro ATX and will cost you about $80. If you wanted to go full ATX, the options start around $100 instead. So I figure if we're looking for a cost-saving option here, we might as well go as low as we can instead of trying to shoehorn in a motherboard that's almost twice as expensive. This would mean that we also would have to cut corners somewhere else, and it's likely that it would be something like on the GPU, which is going to be the EVGA GTX 1650 Super SC Ultra. For $165, there's nothing that beats the 1650 Super. AMD's competitor in this space is the aging RX 580, and while you can still get a decent 1080p experience out of it, 8GB RX 580s will run you slightly more at about $180 right now, and the 1650 Super is as fast, if not slightly faster than it in most titles. An option I did consider was stepping down to the RX 570 and using the extra money to grab a better motherboard. And if you'd rather do that, I probably wouldn't fault you, but the 1650 Super is noticeably faster than the RX 570, so your gameplay will be affected by this decision. Something else I did not want to compromise on was keeping 16 gigs of RAM in our build. Right now you can snag this 2x8 gig kit of Corsair's classic Vengeance LPX for less than $80. And it's 3200 speed as well. This is basically the default setting for a universal memory kit. It fits below any cooler on the market basically and will run almost in any motherboard. For storage, I chose Patriot's Burst SSD, but unfortunately I don't have the capacity that I'm factoring into the price of this build. I priced out our parts list with a 480 gigabyte model instead of this one at $960, as we're talking $60 versus $100. So just be aware that while 480 gigabytes will be fine for Windows and probably a couple of games, you might eventually be limited on storage at some point down the road. Powering us today will be a 450 watt 80 plus bronze PSU from EVGA. Nothing special really about this one, but it is bronze rated and it's fairly affordable. The case for this project will be Phantex's P300. It's only about $50 right now, and at that price, it's a steal. Phantex always puts a lot of thought into their budget products, and this one is definitely no exception. It looks great, and even though it is small, it will still have plenty of space. So here is our system, $550, almost exactly on the nose as of the filming of this video. Like I said, there are other ways that you can build this, but as far as price to performance, I think it will probably be hard to beat. The next biggest step up for frame rate would be to bump up the GPU, and that would likely blow our budget completely. So why don't we get it assembled and see how it runs. As with many budget systems, this was a simple, straightforward build. I've done super budget projects before in no-name cases, and even though that may save you 20 bucks, trust me when I say that working in a proper ATX enclosure like the P300 is well worth the extra money. You get room behind the tray for cables, you get metal edges that don't threaten your life every time you put your hand in the case, and you get a finished product that looks like this. A really great turnout for a gaming PC that won't break the bank. I never love to see a small motherboard in an ATX case, and if that's something that you can't live with, I do get it. But to be fair, it's not always an option to just spend the extra $50 on a better board. While financial flexibility is nice to have, it's a luxury that isn't afforded to some. If you've managed to save up exactly $550 for a PC that you are excited to build, hearing somebody say, well, just spend more money, can be disheartening. As with the majority of my testing, all of them were done with settings cranked up, with the exception of Doom, which was running on high. So if you'd rather get some higher frame rates going at 1080p, you can always turn things down a notch. But overall, this was a very impressive performance by a full system build that costs about as much as just the graphics card from last week's build. And it goes to show you that this is the benefit of choosing PC gaming. You have the option to lose your mind on Newegg and max out your credit card with all the highest end, limited edition, RGB enabled craziness. And sure, that's pretty fun to do, but ultimately, if you are that guy, you will end up playing Overwatch against this guy who built this system instead. And at that point, the playing field is even. So thanks again for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button down below. It does help out the channel a ton. Also consider getting subscribed or visiting the merchandise store at bpscustoms.com. You can find links to everything featured in this video down below in the description. Take care and happy gaming.